A groan escaped Huan's lips, a sound swallowed by the oppressive quiet of his cramped, sun-bleached apartment. Sunlight, thick with dust motes, streamed through a grimy window, illuminating a landscape of discarded instant noodle cups and overdue bills. He pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes, trying to rub away the persistent thrum of a cheap wine headache. You have been reborn. The voice was not a sound, but a presence. It echoed not in his ears, but in the very architecture of his mind, serene, genderless, and utterly out of place. Huan's eyes snapped open. The room was empty. He was alone, as always. A dream. Then, a weird one. Congratulations, host Huan. You have been selected to bind with the wealth conversion system. He sat bolt upright, the threadbare blanket pooling around his waist. System? What system? Is this a prank? He mumbled, his voice a dry rasp. The ethereal presence responded with patient clarity. The rules are simple. You will be provided with a starting capital of 5 million. Your task is to lose this entire amount through legitimate business ventures. Upon successful failure, you will be rewarded with 5 million in personal and tax assets. Huan stared at the cracked plaster on his ceiling, a slow, disbelieving laugh building in his chest. A scam, some new age, targeted at hallucination. He must have downloaded a virus. There is a caveat, the voice continued, its tone unwavering. Should any of your ventures turn a profit, the system will reclaim the entirety of the initial investment. As a penalty for your success, you will be allowed to retain a mere 1% of the earnings. The laugh died in his throat. He ran the logic through his sleep-addled brain. Lose money to make money. Make money and lose everything. It was absurd. It was idiotic. It was perfect. All his life, Huan had been an expert at one thing: failing. Part-time jobs he was fired from. Small-scale investments that evaporated. Online businesses that never saw a second customer. The world celebrated winners, lionized success, and built monuments to profit. That here, finally, was a system that rewarded his natural talent for spectacular, unadulterated failure. A mischievous glint, the first spark of genuine ambition he'd felt in years, lit up his eyes. Okay, he whispered to the empty room, a grin spreading across his face. Okay, I'm in. I accept. The moment the words left his lips, a jolt, sharp and electric, shot through his spine. His left arm shot out, palm flat. His right leg kicked forward in a perfect, rigid line. He was no longer in control of his own body as it guided him through a bizarre, involuntary sequence of what looked like Tai Chi performed by a faulty robot. He flailed, stumbling over a pile of laundry, his limbs moving in a series of stilted, peculiar gestures before a final, resounding hum settled deep in his core. He landed in a heap on the floor, breathless and disoriented. System binding complete, the immortal's voice announced, now softer, almost gentle. This path was chosen for you, Huan. In a previous life, you saved me from a fatal predicament. My own ascension is tied to this cosmic debt. By helping you, I help myself. This quest to lose money is the final trial I must oversee before I can transcend. Huan pushed himself up, his mind reeling from the physical and metaphysical whiplash. A past life, an immortal's ascension. It was all too much. But one thing was crystal clear. He had a mission, a purpose he was uniquely, divinely unqualified and therefore perfectly qualified to undertake. Energized, he threw on a crumpled t-shirt and jeans and headed out, a plan already forming. His first stop was a cluttered shared rental across town, a place that perpetually smelled of artistic desperation and burnt instant noodles. He found his friend, Benbin, just as he expected. Benben stood in the center of his living room, a space overrun with meticulously drawn storyboards, stacks of film theory books, and towers of empty energy drink cans. He was passionately pitching a script to an audience of one a wilting houseplant in the corner. His gestures were grand, his face a mask of theatrical torment. And so, he gazes upon the moon. Benben cried, his voice cracking with emotion. But it is not a moon of hope. No, it is a cold, indifferent orb, weeping its silver light upon the bloated figures of industry. Their shadows, long and corrupted, swallow the dreams of the innocent, leaving only the taste of ash. He clutched his chest, his performance so earnest it was heartbreaking. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He sank onto a stool, burying his face in his hands. No one gets it, he lamented to the plant. They call it convoluted, nonsensical. They say there's no market for existential dread and allegorical capitalism. Kewin leaned against the doorframe, a faint smile on his face. He had found his golden goose, his surefire path to financial ruin. Maybe they're just not the right market, Kewin said calmly. Benben's head snapped up, his eyes daydreamed and startled. Kewin, how long have you been standing there? Long enough to hear genius. Benben snorted, a bitter, self-deprecating sound. Genius doesn't pay the rent. It's about to, Kewin said, pushing off the wall and stepping into the room. He held his friend's gaze, his expression dead serious. I won the lottery. 500,000. The air went still. Benben's jaw hung slightly agape. He blinked, as if trying to process a foreign language. You what? 500,000, Kewin repeated, his voice firm. And I want to invest it. All of it. In your film. Benben stared, his face a whirlwind of shock, disbelief, and a dawning, fragile hope. He slowly picked up his script, his hands trembling. Kewin, I can't, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. This is your future. This is everything. What if I lose it all for you? Kewin's heart sang with joyous relief. That's the entire point, he thought, a manic glee bubbling just beneath his calm exterior. He walked over and placed a steadying hand on Benben's shoulder. I'm not worried, he said, the lie feeling more true than anything he'd said in years. I trust your vision completely. He squeezed his friend's shoulder, his grin now open and reassuring. You're my first partner, Benben. Let's go make a cinematic disaster. The office was an altar to bad financial decisions. Perched on the top floor of the city's most prestigious skyscraper, its floor-to-ceiling windows framed the sprawling metropolis like a living, breathing painting, a view that cost more per month than a suburban family's mortgage. Sunlight glinted off the untouched surfaces of a dozen high-end editing workstations, each one a monolith of processing power that would remain largely dormant. Benben, dwarfed by an ergonomic chair that cost more than his first car, swiveled to face Kewin. Are you sure about this, man? We could have gotten a perfectly good space in the industrial park for 1/10 of the price. These Italian leather sofas are low nonsense. Kewin cut him off, gesturing expansively at their empty palace of productivity. Image is everything, Benben. It showcases our high class. It boosts work efficiency. How can we expect to create a masterpiece in a dingy warehouse? He conveniently omitted the fact that their goal was the exact opposite. Every extravagant purchase sent a thrill of hope through him. This was how he would lose money. This was how he would finally be free. And the cameras? Benben pressed, pointing to a fleet of sleek, black cinema cameras still in their boxes. These are the latest red models. We could shoot a blockbuster with these. We're making a 5-minute short film. Quality, Kewin said with the unearned confidence of a madman. We must respect the art form. His ambition for fiscal self-destruction grew bolder. You know what we need, a personal chef from a 5-star hotel. To keep morale high, He was on a roll now, his mind racing for new, ludicrous expenses, and get me some ancient imperial coins for feng shui, to bless the production with divine power. Suddenly, a cold, metallic voice echoed in his mind, sharp as a shard of ice. Warning: funds spent on personal luxury items or non-business-related esoterical will not be calculated as business losses. Penalty for violation: severe electric shock. Huan flinched, a jolt running through him as if the threat were already real. The system was watching, always watching. He couldn't just throw money away on himself. It had to be a legitimate, albeit disastrous, business expense. The pressure mounted, a knot tightening in his chest. He was a prisoner in a gilded cage, forced to become richer against his will. He cleared his throat, forcing a casual tone. On second thought, forget the coys. Let's focus on the script. We need something groundbreakingly terrible. Benbin, relieved to be back on a topic that made some semblance of sense, leaned forward. Okay. So what's the new idea? Last week it was a sentient coffee mug that solves crimes. Huan's eyes lit up with a fresh wave of terrible inspiration. He paced before the window, the city lights beginning to twinkle below. Picture this, he began, his voice filled with dramatic weight. An overbearing, ridiculously handsome CEO of a multinational corporation standard. Benbin shrugged. Who falls madly, inexplicably in love? Huan continued, a triumphant glint in his eye. With a cleaning out. Benbin stared. A cleaning out, you mean like an insect? No, an ant person. A janitor who is also part ant. We'll spend a fortune on terrible CGI. The public will be disgusted. Critics will call it an abomination. It's perfect. Huan was practically giddy. No one in their right mind would pay to see that. It was a guaranteed flop. With their disastrous concept locked in, they moved on to the most critical phase, casting. They posted an open call online for their short film, CEO's Six-Legged Sweetheart. Deliberately vague on the details but promising a handsome salary. Applications flooded in, a sea of polished headshots and desperate ambition. Benbin scrolled through them on a large monitor, pointing out professionally trained actors and aspiring models. She has a good look, Benbin said, zooming in on a young woman with sharp features. Too pretty, Huan dismissed. Too much talent. We need someone who looks like they've never seen a camera before. Someone raw. Someone uncastable. His eyes drifted to the comment section below their casting post. Amid the hopeful inquiries and spam links, one comment stood out for its sheer practicality. Do you need the office cleaned? I have my own supplies. Rates negotiable. It was signed, Neo Shion. Huan felt a spark of genius. Her, he said, pointing at the screen. Get me her contact info. I want to interview her. Benbin squinted. For which part, the aunt? He shook his head. Huan. She's a cleaner. Her profile says she's 43. Exactly. Huan clapped his hands together. She's perfect. An hour later, the automatic glass doors slid open and Sister Shion walked in. She was the antithesis of everything the office represented. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, practical bun, and her expression was one of polite evaluation. Her gaze wasn't on the two young men who had summoned her, but on the pristine white marble floors, as if mentally calculating the time it would take to mop. She wore simple trousers and a clean but faded polo shirt, a stark contrast to Huan's designer suit. You are the bosses? She asked, her voice direct and devoid of pleasantries. We are, Huan said, smiling benevolently. The film set was less a location and more a collection of borrowed objects pretending to be an office. Dust motes danced in the beams of cheap floodlights, illuminating Benbin, who stood stiffly beside a particle board desk. He puffed out his chest, attempting to channel the overbearing CEO from the script Kewen had gleefully approved. "Woman," Benben declared, his voice a strained baritone that cracked on the last syllable. "You have successfully captured my attention." The silence that followed was broken only by a faint, rhythmic squeaking. In the background, out of focus, Sister Xian meticulously wiped down a glass partition with a microfiber cord. She moved with an unhurried grace, her brow furrowed in concentration as she erased a particularly stubborn smudge. She wasn't acting, she was working. This was, after all, just another cleaning job for her, albeit one where she was occasionally asked to stand in a specific spot and look surprised. Hunched over a glitchy monitor in a corner, Kewen felt a smile tug at his lips. This was perfect, utterly, irredeemably perfect. The script was a collage of cliches. Benben's performance was wooden enough to build a cabinet, and his leading lady was so authentic she was literally just doing her job. Every frame was a love letter to financial ruin. The system's cold, mechanical voice echoed in his memory. To every 1 million lost in a business venture, the host will be rewarded with 5 million in personal assets. He was about to become very, very wealthy. Benben slumped, his CEO persona deflating. "It's not working, Kewen. I feel ridiculous." Kewen strode onto the makeshift set, clapping his friend on the shoulder with theatrical encouragement. "No. It's brilliant. It's avant-garde." He lied smoothly. "But you're holding back. I want you to be crazier. Forget logic. Forget narrative cohesion. I want you to subvert the audience's brain cells." Benben's eyes lit up with artistic fervor. "Subvert their brain cells," he repeated, as if it were a sacred mantra. The rest of the shoot descended into a beautiful, chaotic mess. Benben delivered monologues to a ficus plant. Sister Xian, asked to look heartbroken, simply stared blankly at a dust bunny she'd spotted under the desk, a look of mild professional concern on her face. In one climactic scene, Benben was meant to sweep everything off his desk in a fit of passion. He did so with such gusto that he slipped on a stray pen and knocked over a light stand. Xian, without missing a beat, calmly retrieved a dustpan and began sweeping up the debris. It was all captured on film. It was all gold. A week later, the atmosphere in Kewen's actual office was a universal way. Perched on the 30th floor, the room was a symphony of minimalist grey and chrome, the city sprawling below like a circuit board. Benben sat opposite him, hunched in a designer chair that seemed to swallow him whole. His face was ashen. 35, Benben whispered, his voice hoarse with defeat. He slid a tablet across the polished mahogany desk. The analytics page for their short film, overbearing CEO falls in love with cleaning lady, stared back at them. 35 views in 3 days. And I think 20 of those were my mom refreshing the page. He buried his face in his hands. "Kewen, I'm so sorry. I've lost you so much money." "All of it." "Wasted." Kewen fought to keep a triumphant grin from splitting his face. He arranged his features into a mask of solemn commiseration. "Don't worry about it. Benben, art is a risk." We took a shot. Inside, his mind was racing. The film's budget was exactly 1 million. According to the system, his $5 million reward for this spectacular failure should be processed any moment. He was vibrating with anticipation. He pulled the tablet closer, feigning a critical review of the numbers. His eyes drifted to the comment section. It was empty. A beautiful, barren wasteland of public indifference. Perfect. The stale air in Benben's cramped apartment felt as heavy as his despair. On the glow of 3 laptop screens, a torrent of digital venom scrolled endlessly. Artless, a cinematic train wreck. The lead actress looks like my auntie who cleans the toilets. Benben was a ghost in his own home, slumped over a keyboard, his face pale and drawn. Every new comment was another shovel of dirt on the grave of his artistic ambition. Maybe they're right, he mumbled, his voice raspy. Maybe it's just garbage. Kewin, reclining on the lumpy sofa, took a slow, deliberate sip of cheap beer, savoring the taste of spectacular failure. He feigned a comforting tone, though his heart was singing a triumphant aria of impending financial loss. Don't be so hard on yourself, Benbin. Art is subjective. Besides, we knew this was a long shot. A beautiful, glorious, multi-million-dollar loss of a long shot. From the kitchenette, Sister Shion overheard them. She paused, a plate of neatly sliced apples in her hands. She had seen the comments, too. They stung. But what hurt more was the defeated slump in the young director's shoulders and the false brightness in Mr. Kewin's voice. In her decades of cleaning corporate offices, hotel rooms, and film sets, she had learned to recognize the hollow ring of a broken promise. But Kewin was different. He hadn't haggled over her fee or delayed payment. He had handed her a thick envelope of cash on the very first day, looking her in the eye and saying, Kewin's office, once a temple of minimalist despair, now throbbed with an alien energy. Joy. Champagne corks lay like fallen soldiers on the polished concrete floor. Benbin, clutching a gaudy, onion-shaped trophy, was doing an impromptu victory dance on the custom-built mahogany desk Kewin had bought specifically because it was offensively expensive. Sister Shion, radiant in a simple but elegant dress that looked nothing like her old cleaning uniform, watched him with a shy, disbelieving smile. Her face still flushed from the flashbulbs of the award ceremony. But Kewin wasn't celebrating. He was at war. With his phone pressed so hard against his ear it felt like an extension of his skull. He paced the length of the floor-to-ceiling window, his reflection a frantic blur against the glittering city skyline. What do you mean you can't take it down? He hissed into the receiver. I'm the producer. It's my film. I own the rights. On the other end, the voice of the streaming platform's representative was infuriatingly calm. Mr. Kewin, with all due respect, To Live and Die in the Gutter is currently the hottest short drama on our platform. The engagement metrics are unprecedented. Taking it down now would be, well, it would be financial suicide. That's the entire point. Kewin roared, earning a confused glance from Benbin, who paused his dance mid-shimmy. Look, your own AI analysis said the script was nonsensical. You told me that yourself. And it is. The representative agreed cheerfully. The AI flagged it for incoherent plot structure and logically inconsistent character motivations. But the audience, they don't care. They find it authentic, relatable. They say it captures the beautiful absurdity of modern life. We're seeing think pieces pop up everywhere. A masterpiece of post-ironic cinema. One called it. Kewin felt his blood run cold. Post-ironic. They were calling his deliberate train wreck a masterpiece. He was about to argue further when a news alert flashed on the large screen mounted on the wall. A news anchor was speaking grimly. The so-called expert critics who led the initial smear campaign against the surprise hit film have been exposed in a massive corruption scandal. Leaked emails show they were accepting bribes from major studios to systematically bury independent projects. All their affiliated projects have been pulled pending investigation. Benman let out a whoop. Justice. See? Kewin. The universe has a plan. Kewin hung up the phone, the dial tone a mournful siren in his ear. The universe did have a plan, and it was to make him a monumentally successful failure. He had not only created an award-winning film, but had also accidentally cleaned up the industry. A strange, bitter taste of vindication mixed with the ash of his defeat. We did it, boss. Denbin leapt off the desk, slushing champagne as he threw an arm around Kewin's shoulders. The Green Onion Award for Best Feature Film was thrust into Kewin's face. It smelled faintly of spray paint. Can you believe it? From a script you hated to the top of the world. Don't remind me, Kewin groaned, collapsing into his leather chair. "Do you know what this means? That we're geniuses?" Benben offered. "It means after paying all of you, the platform fees, and the ridiculous taxes on this thing, I've made a clean profit of 1 million, Kewin said, the words feeling like poison on his tongue. $1 million. Sister Xian approached his desk cautiously, her earlier radiance now tinged with concern. "Mr. Kewin, shouldn't you be happy we won? Everyone who looked down on us was proven wrong." Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of her entire life struggle. A life where a single victory like this was unimaginable. For a fleeting moment, seeing the genuine pride in her eyes, Kewin felt a pang of guilt. He had used her unassuming authenticity, as a tool for his own selfish goal, and he had failed her by succeeding. He couldn't explain. How could he tell them their triumph was his catastrophe? He just shook his head, burying his face in his hands. Benben and Xian exchanged a worried look, their celebration deflating in the face of their benefactor's profound misery. As they began to quietly clean up, Kewin felt a familiar, chilling stillness settle over the room. The air grew heavy, smelling of ozone and ancient incense. He looked up. The immortal was standing by the window, his shimmering, translucent form looking utterly out of place against the modern cityscape. His expression was one of profound disappointment. "You were so close," the immortal lamented, his voice a sigh that seemed to echo from another dimension. Kewin's team couldn't see him. They continued to gather empty bottles, oblivious. The heavenly gates were polished. Alang Shin had reserved a table for us at the celestial banquet. "And you went and made a profit." "I know," Kewin whispered, the guilt churning in his stomach. "I'm sorry. I tried to make it bad. I really did." "Trying is not doing," the immortal chastised gently. "Now we are stuck here. No ascension, no immortality, just this." He gestured vaguely at the city below, a tapestry of mortal struggle and fleeting ambition. Kewin's shoulders slumped. He had not only failed himself, but he had failed his otherworldly guide. He had doomed them both to this gilded cage. But then, the immortal's expression softened. He drifted closer, his gaze falling upon Sister Xian as she carefully wiped a champagne spill from the floor, a movement still possessing the ingrained efficiency of her former life. However, the immortal mused, a flicker of cosmic insight in his eyes. "The legends never mention that you have to be in the heavens to find a jade rabbit fairy." Kewin followed his gaze. He saw Sister Xian not as a cleaning lady or even as an actress, but as the quiet, resilient heart of their impossible venture. He saw the unwavering loyalty in Benben, who was now trying to fit the onion-shaped award into a bookshelf, his brow furrowed in concentration. They weren't just employees. They were his co-conspirators, his accidental comrades. The greatest treasures are not always stored in the celestial treasury. The immortal continued, his voice taking on the quality of a proverb. "Sometimes they are found in the mortal realm, disguised as ordinary people. Perhaps this is its own reward." A strange sense of peace began to settle over Kewin, a quiet resignation that felt almost like relief. Maybe this wasn't, maybe it was just a different path. Just as the thought formed, a cold, mechanical voice echoed directly in his mind, sharp and devoid of any celestial wisdom. "System alert. Profit detected. Mission failed. Penalty protocol initiated. New mission target assigned. User must now lose 50 million. Kewin's jaw dropped. 50 million. The number was so absurd, so cosmically unfair, that he couldn't even muster the energy for despair. It was simply hilarious. A low chuckle escaped his lips, which soon grew into a full-blown laugh. Then Ben and Sister Xian turned to him, startled. His sudden swing from catatonic depression to manic laughter was more alarming than his silence. "What's so funny?" Benben asked, holding the award like a shield. Hyun leaned back in his chair, the laughter subsiding into a weary, knowing smile. He looked at his team, the eccentric director who believed in him, the overnight star who grounded him, his jade rabbit fairies. His curse had become their blessing, and in a way, their blessing was becoming his. He was trapped. Yes, but he was no longer alone in his gilded prison. The immortal gave a slight, knowing nod, a silent acknowledgement of the universe's grand, intricate joke. It seems your journey in this realm is far from over, he whispered, his form beginning to fade. You may be destined to fail upwards, Kyun, but what a magnificent failure it will be. Kyun's gaze lingered on Sister Xian, who was watching him with a mixture of confusion and a nascent, hopeful smile. 50 million. It was an impossible task. But as he looked at the two people who had turned his disaster into a triumph, a new thought sparked within him. Losing money was hard, but building something with them, maybe that was a kind of success he could learn to live with.